looking to connect a region of over 600 mil bridges between our lands.
Hello, I'm Alma Angeles. We're moving to the next stage of the pandemic, and as the world resets to the new normal, we find ourselves seeking the right balance between health and livelihood, constantly adjusting the boundaries between liberty and responsibility. Welcome to ASEAN in Focus. First, 3 of the 8 Filipinos injured in a gas explosion in the United Arab Emirates capital, Abu Dhabi, are still undergoing treatment in 2 separate hospitals, according to the Department of Foreign Affairs on Wednesday night. Now, in an advisory, the DFA said the 5 others who were hurt in the blast have already been released from the hospital. 10 Filipinos, including 2 children, figured in the explosion inside the restaurant at Sheikh Rashid bin Sid Road, also known as Airport Road in Abu Dhabi, last August 31 at 10 a.m. local time. 2 of the victims, Clark Bakud Gasis and Meringer Gok Ong Bertoses, were instantly killed in the blast. The government had earlier assured financial assistance and other benefits to the kin of the 2 deceased overseas Filipinos. Meanwhile, the Department of Labor and Employment, or DOLE, said it will give financial assistance to the kin of the 2 overseas Filipino workers who died from the explosion in the United Arab Emirates. In a statement, Labor and Employment Secretary Silvestre Bello identified the victims as Clark Bakud Gasis and Meringer Gok Ong Bertoses. Gasis, 39, is an electrical draftsman from Surigao del Sur, and Bertoses, 26, is a Kentucky Fried Chicken Abu Dhabi employee from Negros Oriental. Bello said both will get a 120,000 bereavement assistance from the government, as well as insurance benefits if they are qualified members of the Overseas Workers Welfare Administration, or OWA. Meanwhile, the Philippine Embassy in Tokyo confirmed that 39 Filipinos were on board a cargo ship that went missing after sending a distress signal from the East China Sea on Wednesday. Embassy Deputy Chief of Mission Robespierre Bolivar said the Philippine Embassy in Tokyo and the Philippines Consulate General in Osaka are coordinating with Japan Coast Guard on this. No additional details as of this time. A report from Japan's Kyodo News said that one of the Filipino crew members was earlier rescued and that his health condition was not life-threatening. The embassy, however, has yet to confirm this, as the Panamanian registered freighter carrying 43 foreign crew members and about 5,800 cows was on its way to the Chinese port of Tangshan from New Zealand when it issued a distress signal about 185 kilometers west of Amami Oshima Island in Kagoshima Prefecture. The crew also reportedly include 2 New Zealanders and 2 Australians. The call for help came as strong winds and torrential rain lashed the area due to Typhoon Maysak. Now, the Thai government is willing to spend 45 billion baht to help people affected by the pandemic. To tell us more, joining us live is Cristel Mapa from our EBC Bangkok Bureau. Hello, Cristel.
Hi, Alma. Good afternoon to you, and good afternoon to all our viewers.
Go ahead.
Here's the latest update here in Thailand. The government plans to spend 45 billion baht on 3,000 baht cash handouts to 15 million people affected by the economic fallout caused by COVID-19, which is expected to inject a cash flow of about 90 billion baht in the economy and boost domestic consumption. This economic stimulus measure was approved on Wednesday, which was proposed by the Finance Ministry. Under the measure, the government will give 3,000 baht cash handouts to people to buy consumer. The Finance Ministry will prepare details of the cash handout scheme to present to the center again, and the measure is expected to be implemented from next month until the end of the year. The measure is aimed at helping 15 million people. Spending under the measure will be initially capped at 100 to 250 per person per day. For shops and businesses that want to join the program, priority will be given to small entrepreneurs as well as street vendors, and hawkers. The cash handouts are intended to ease the burden of rising living costs, boost domestic consumption, and help more than 80,000 small entrepreneurs, street vendors, and hawkers, Mr. Danuccio said, adding the government will subsidize 50% of their spending. The measure is expected to stimulate cash flow of about 90 billion baht and will boost the economy by 0.25%, he added. This update is from Bangkok Post. Back to you, Alma.
Very much, Christelle, for your updates there in Thailand. Looking forward to more updates. Christelle?
Take care always, Alma. Reporting live from Thailand, this is Crystal Mapa. We live in interesting times.
The Quezon City government said it observed an increase in the number of youths infected with the COVID-19 due to the close contact with positive adults in households, as indicated by data from its artificial intelligence-based or AI-based platform. The increase was mentioned during the presentation of the accomplishment report on Bantay COVID, a monitoring and contact tracing platform it developed in partnership with the Philippine Medical Association and the Vario Loadworks Incorporated. Quezon City Epidemiology and Disease Surveillance Unit head Dr. Rolly Cruz said almost 8,000 patients have been enrolled as of the last count since the platform's implementation on July 29. He also added that the data supported the theory that further transmission of COVID-19 occurs within the households of patients. He added that around 895 senior citizens are also in danger of acquiring other diseases after being infected with the virus. With the help of Bantay COVID, Mayor Joy Belmonte said that the city government can craft new policies and strategies to prevent the further spread of the coronavirus within the communities. Bantay COVID is an SMS platform that utilizes AI and text messaging through mobile phones to enhance contact tracing and daily monitoring of symptoms for all in-home quarantine suspected and probable COVID-19 cases. A survivor of Khmer Rouge's Tuol Sleng prison, better known as S21, reacted to the death of Doik, chief torturer behind Cambodia's genocidal regime. Take a look.
ធ្លាប់រស់ស្រាប់ជាប់នៅនេះជាមួយម្ដាយនិងជាមួយប្អូនប្រុសបាទព្រោះរំតែមានកុមារទាំងអស់គឺ5នាក់និងស្ត្រី3នាក់គេចាប់ចុងក្រោយបងអស់ដែលមកទូស្លាយនឹងបាទអីចឹងទៅហើយដូចបានទទួលសុំទោសជនរងគ្រោះធ្វើឲ្យយើងមានអារម្មណ៍ធូរផ្លូវចិត្តធូរមួយផ្នែកបាទមួយផ្នែកមួយចំណែករហូតដល់បច្ចុប្បន្នឥឡូវនេះថ្ងៃនេះហើយយប់មិញនេះឮសម្ដងថាដូចបានទទួលបូនអភិបាលហើយដូចជាជនរងគ្រោះម្នាក់ដែលបានសម្លាប់ជនរងគ្រោះនៅគុកទូស្លាយនេះ14000នាក់បើតាមខ្ញុំដឹងតាមឯកសារបាទហើយពួកយើងមានអារម្មណ៍ថាគាត់ទៅហើយព្រលឹងអ្នកទោសនៅទីនេះច្បាស់ទទួលបានយុត្តិធម៌ដូចជាពុកម្ដាយខ្ញុំដូចជនរងគ្រោះនៅទីនេះទាំងអស់គ្នាពួកគេនឹងបានយុត្តិធម៌ពួកគេនឹងបានទៅបាទដូចបានទទួលកំហុសហើយរហូតដល់ដូចតែបានស្លាប់ហើយយើងអហោតកម្មឲ្យគាត់ចេះចោះថាឲ្យគាត់ធ្វើចូលរួមដូចទទួលកំហុសដូចបានសហការជាមួយតុលាការហើយដូចបានទទួលសុំទោសជនរងគ្រោះនៅទីនេះរហូតដល់ដូចបានស្លាប់ទៅវិញដោយពំនាំនៅកំហុសដល់ធំធេងរបស់គាត់ទៅជាមួយសាកសពរបស់គាត់បាទហើយយើងហៅកម្មឲ្យគាត់ទៅចោះតែយើងជាជនជាតិខ្មែរយើងកាន់សាសនាពុទ្ធបាទយើងហៅកម្មឲ្យគាត់ទៅចោះអ្វីដែលគាត់បានប្រព្រឹត្តគឺយកទៅជាមួយគាត់ទាំងអស់ដែលគាត់បានទទួលបាទបាទរឿងរ៉ាវទាំងអស់ហ្នឹងយើងមិនអាចភ្លេចបានណាព្រោះថាវាទំហំនៃការជឿចាប់ដល់ខ្ញុំក្មេងជាកាលនោះខ្ញុំក្មេងអាយុ9ឆ្នាំដែលគេធ្វើទរណកម្មម្ដាយនេះចំពោះមុខយើងតក់ស្លុតយើងភ័យខ្លាចរហូតដល់យើងជាយាមរស់រហូតដល់ពេលនេះបាទ
The chief torturer behind Cambodia's genocidal Khmer Rouge died on Wednesday while serving a life sentence for crimes against humanity, leaving just one surviving leader of the regime that killed an estimated 2 million people in the 1970s. Kaingwek Iev, 77, better known by his alias as Doik, served as the head of the infamous Tuol Sleng prison in the late 1970s and was convicted of crimes against humanity in 2012 by a UN-backed tribunal for his role in the Killing Fields regime. Doik had been in and out of hospital for years and was admitted again this week, according to tribunal spokesman Net Piek Tra. According to a doctor's letter confirming his death shown to AFP, Doik had symptoms of acute respiratory distress. The first member of the Khmer Rouge to stand trial, Doik's testimony served as an important milestone for millions of Cambodians who suffered under the brutal regime. Some 2 million people were believed to have died during the 4-year rule due to starvation, forced labor, and mass executions in detention centers across the country. ASEAN in Focus will be right back.
Bukas na po ang auditions para sa Tagisan ng Galing Part 2. Mag-audition na po kayo sapagkat mahigit sa 7 million pesos ang nag-aantay na papremyo sa kategorya ng sayawan at kantahan. Opo, Tagisan ng Galing Part 2. Dito lamang po yan sa Net 25.
The New Era University, in its 45th year of excellence, discipline, and service to humanity, will offer online education all levels beginning this first semester academic year 2020 to 2021 through the NEU Virtual Learning Environment, or NEU VLE. New Era University offers a complete basic education cycle from kindergarten up to senior high school, offering all strands. NEU has 18 colleges, and 2 graduate schools. It also offers ALS and ETF. Best of all, NEU has the most affordable tuition fees among private universities in the Philippines. NEU is at Quezon City, the city of San Fernando, Pampanga, General Santos City, South Cotabato, Lipa City, Batangas, and Pinugay, Baras, Rizal. New Era University is under the stewardship of Dr. Dilo L. Rosas. What are you waiting for? Be part of the new normal. Enroll now. Classes start on October 5, 2020.
To Vietnam now, where the country has lifted a 14-day quarantine for foreign experts. Micah Gwyneth Apostol joins us live from Vietnam. Hello, Micah.
Hello, Alma.
Go ahead, Micah.
Here's the latest news from Vietnam. No more quarantine for foreign experts entering Vietnam for short term. Vietnam has lifted the 14-day quarantine for foreign experts, investors, managers, and diplomats entering the country for less than 14 days. But guideline issued by the Ministry of Health on Tuesday required them to continue complying with all other requirements, like wearing a mask and refraining from shaking hands to prevent the spread of the novel coronavirus. They also need to complete medical procedures, including tests for COVID-19. The organization that invites them needs to guarantee that it or an international insurance company will bear all medical and other expenses if they contract the disease in Vietnam. Vietnam started charging people coming from overseas for quarantine from September 1, but those coming for diplomatic missions are exempted from the fee. After 14 days since arrival, if a person tests negative for the virus, they can remain in Vietnam without quarantining. Vietnam has recorded 1,044 COVID-19 cases and 34 deaths. Over 55,000 people are in quarantine. The country has gone 3 days without a new community transmission as of September 1. Back to you, Alma.
Thank you very much, Micah, for your updates there in Vietnam. Stay safe, stay healthy.
Thank you, Alma. Reporting live from Danang, Vietnam, This is Micah Gunet Apostle. We live in interesting times.
More than 600 Islamic school students in Indonesia have tested positive for the coronavirus, according to a health ministry official, marking the latest outbreak as classrooms reopened across the country. The Darussalam Blok Agung boarding school in East Java's Banyuwangi Regency has initiated a 2-week quarantine of some 6,000 students after at least 664 pupils were infected. Most of the cases involved mild or no symptoms, but the local police and the military have blocked access to the school. Mass testing had been carried out from the middle of August after some students complained of feeling unwell, according to the school. There are thousands of religious boarding schools across Indonesia, the world's biggest Muslim majority nation. The mass infection comes after nearly 1,300 people at an Indonesian military academy tested positive for the virus in July. Indonesia on Wednesday reported more than 3,000 new cases to bring its official total to over 180,000 infections and 7,616 deaths. Health Undersecretary Maria Rosario Verire warned health facilities that their licenses will be revoked if they fail to properly dispose of their infectious medical waste. There's a sanction for all these healthcare facilities, she said. She said this during an online media press briefing. She said that proper handling of medical waste should be strictly implemented to prevent the infection and transmission of the deadly disease. The health official urged local government units and health facilities to remember that there are guidelines and protocols on proper handling of medical waste and that it shouldn't be ignored. The DOH also underscored that waste management must be given priority to address the increase in the generation of hazardous waste. Let's listen in.
Na ito pong mga rapid test kits na ito po ay healthcare waste. Ibig sabihin kapag healthcare waste, mas iba ho ang treatment niyan kaysa sa ordinary na mga waste products natin katulad sa bahay. Dahil ito po ay maaring makapanghawa at maaring makapag-cause ng harm sa mga tao, no? Katulad niyan, nalaglag dun sa kalye o kaya ay baka hinahawakan lang po ng mga nagkokolekta na wala silang gloves, no? And they can easily get infections. Ito pong mga ginagamit natin for the COVID-19 response, itong ating mga PPEs, itong ating mga kits or testing kits or diagnostic kits na ginagamit at iba pa ho na mga ginagamit for our patients. Ito po ay considered as healthcare waste. It should be treated differently. Alam po ng healthcare facilities namin kung ano ang proper disposal. It should be placed in a bag na meron pong label yan na healthcare waste yan.
Indonesia, which has one of the highest rates of child marriages in the world, according to UNICEF, last year raised the legal age for wedlock in a bid to tackle the problem. Despite the reform, many are still being forced into marriage by desperate families in poverty. Take a look.
Saya menikah di usia 15. Saya menikah masih duduk di bangku SMP kelas 3. Saya bertemu dengan suami saya.
Ketemunya di mana ya?
Ketemu di rumah. Mau jadi orang seks.
All right, we'll try and get back with that report later. Indonesian officials in hazmat suits parade empty coffins through the streets of Jakarta to remind residents that coronavirus cases are still surging in one of Asia's worst-hit nations. A convoy of truck, hearses, and pallbearers snake its way through crowded neighborhoods in the capital. Take a look.
ada yang nyapu, ada yang kena dana, semuanya tidak jerak. Dan kita lihat juga di beberapa posisi di lingkungan, masih juga orang masih membuka masker, karena mungkin mereka belum terkena. Nah, salah satu yang ampuh itu, kita bawa keranda, kita kasih tahu kalau melalaikan semuanya, maka ini adalah akibatnya, gitu. Jadi
ASEAN in Focus will be right back.
Pare, bilisan mo! Mag-alas 12 na! Hey guys, alas 12 na! Tara na!
Excuse me, padaan! Alas 12 na!
Malalayong lugar ang kanilang narating para maghanap buhay. Tulungan ang pamilyang iniwan sa sariling bayan. Yan ang ating mga overseas Filipino worker. Pero dahil sa di pangkaraniwang pangyayaring hatid ay krisis, may ilan sa kanilang nagpasyang umuwi. Pinagyaman ang sariling lupain, nagtayo ng negosyo na kasama sa puhunan ang sipag at tiyaga. Ang mga OFW, maraming sakripisyo, ninanais maging kapaki-pakinabang maging sa kanilang pagbabalik bansa. Sapagkat ang ating mga bagong bayani, Pilipino pa rin sa puso at damdamin.
A regional trial court in Olongapo City has ordered the release of U.S. Marine Joseph Scott Pemberton, who was convicted for the killing of Filipino transgender Jennifer Laude in 2014. Olongapo RTC Branch 74, Judge Rolin Hines Habalde approved the partial motion for reconsideration submitted by Pemberton and considered that the U.S. soldier had already served his sentence of more than 10 years imprisonment after computing the period of his preventive suspension, actual service of sentence, and good conduct time allowance. The court also said that Pemberton had already served 10 years, 1 month, and 10 days of imprisonment, which is more than the 10 years maximum penalty imposed by the court. However, the actual days he had served in prison were only 2,142 days, or roughly equivalent to 5 years and 10 months of imprisonment. The rest were due to GCTA during preventive imprisonment, 260 days, and GCTA during service of sentence, 1,288 days, of 1,548 days of 4 years and almost 3 months period. The judge also said that Pemberton had already paid the 4.6 million pesos in damages to the victim's family, Pemberton was sentenced to suffer 6 to 10 years imprisonment by the Olongapo City RTC Branch 74 back in December of 2015 for killing Laude inside a bathroom of a motel on October 11, 2014. Following the court's decision, presidential spokesperson Harry Roque lamented that the U.S. continues to enjoy the conquering colonials in the Philippines. Meanwhile, the United Nations Educational, Scientific and Cultural Organization, or UNESCO, has officially classified the Ampatuan massacre as resolved proof that the country's justice system in safeguarding press freedom is truly working under the Duterte administration. Moes Chakchuk, UNESCO's Assistant Director General for Communication and Information, announced this in his letter to Ambassador Teresa Lazaro, acknowledging the concrete efforts of the government in bringing to justice the suspects in the 2009 massacre. A total of 58 people, including 32 journalists, died in the Ampatuan massacre, also known as Maguindanao massacre. In a report of the Department of Foreign Affairs, United Nations and International Organizations, or DFA UNIO, to the Presidential Task Force on Media Security, or PT-FOMS, it was likewise announced that UNESCO is ready to provide support to the Philippines in the form of capacity building for the judiciary on international standards regarding freedom of expression. Department of Justice Secretary Menardo Guevara, chair of the PT-FOMS, lauded UNESCO's pronouncement, saying the Philippine justice system is fair and effective. Ampatuan brothers Datu Andal Jr., Zaldi, and Anwar Sr. were convicted of 57 counts of murder in the 2009 massacre, although their brother Datu Sajid Islam Ampatuan was acquitted. The national government's outstanding debt rose to 9.6 trillion pesos as the end of July this year, as the government continues to ramp up its borrowings to soften the blow of the COVID-19 pandemic. The latest data from the Bureau of the Treasury showed debt stock soaring by 17.4% year-on-year from 7.8 trillion pesos in end July 2019. From the end December 2019, the level of 7.73 trillion pesos, the national government's debt portfolio as of end July increased by 18.5%. Of the total outstanding debt, 68.3% were domestic debt, while 31.7% were sourced externally. Domestic debt as of end July was up by 19.2% to 6.26 trillion pesos from 5.25 trillion a year ago. To date, domestic debt rose by 22% by 5.13 trillion pesos as of end 2019. By the end of this year, the national government expects its outstanding debt to reach 10.16 trillion pesos, up by 31.42% from last year's amount. As tax collections are down amid the pandemic, the Development Budget Coordination Committee is projecting the country's budget deficit to more than double to 9.6% of GDP, or 1.815 trillion pesos, from only 3.4% of GDP, or 660.2 billion pesos last year. The government expects the country's unemployment rate to surge to at least a 15-year high this year, as indicated by the macroeconomic parameters under the 2021 budget documents. The documents show the Cabinet-Level Development Budget Coordination Committee, or DBCC, projects the unemployment rate to more than double to a range of 11% to 13% by year-end, from only 5.1% back in 2019. Should this expectation hold true, this would be the highest since 2005, when the country's unemployment rate was at 7.8%. The highest comparable unemployment rate so far was recorded in 2006 at 8%. For 2021, this is expected to go down to 7% to 8% and rise to 8.5% to 9.5% in 2022. And the Philippine peso has emerged as among Asia's strongest currencies, even amid a pandemic-induced global economic downturn, as a result of the country's mild inflation rate and a balance of payments surplus reflected in its record-high foreign currency reserves as of June this year. Finance Secretary Carlos Dominguez III said this in a news release issued on Tuesday. As of September 1, the peso equivalent of the US dollar was 48.48 based on the reference exchange rate bulletin of the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas. Compared to the January 2 rate of 50.8 to the US dollar, the peso appreciated by at least 4.5% against the greenback. Now, Dominguez said confidence in the Philippine economy and the local currency are also among the factors that have raised the value of the peso against the US dollar. Dominguez said the Philippines' low inflation rate of 2.7% as of July this year also contributed to the rise in the peso's value against the US dollar. To stimulate the economy, he said consumer confidence needs to improve as 70% of the country's growth is consumption-driven. Dominguez said restoring consumer confidence requires people to have jobs, which is why the government is going ahead on President Duterte's centerpiece program, Build, 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 as infrastructure investments have the largest multiplier effects on the economy and creates a lot of jobs. Now, September 2nd marks the end of World War II. A memorable yet scaled-down ceremony took place in Pearl Harbor, Hawaii, where the dignitaries of more than 50 included surviving war veterans, Governor David Ige and Navy Admiral Philip Davidson of the U.S. Indo-Pacific Command. But it was the keynote speaker's remarks that our correspondent Mio Acenas highlights in this report. Take a look.
It is fitting that we are gathered here today on the USS Missouri, where the conflict in the Pacific came to an end on this day in 1945. This ship, which was built for war, has since been dedicated to peace and reconciliation. It now rests in the very harbor where more than 2,400 Americans paid the ultimate price nearly 8 decades ago at the beginning of World War II.
Days before the actual ceremony, organizers hosted a Legacy of Peace aerial parade, wherein combat airplanes of different shapes and sizes used in World War II flew several times around the island of Oahu. Due to the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic, the event itself had to be scaled down by invitation only, while others had to join in virtually via live stream. The event began promptly at 9:02 a.m., which was the actual time that Japan formally surrendered to the Allies in a ceremony that ended the deadliest conflict in human history. The destroyer USS Michael Murphy rendered honors as she sailed by the Missouri and Arizona Memorial, which marked the beginning of America's involvement in World War II. Defense Secretary and keynote speaker Mark T. Esper described the long-term effects of the war and the role that the United States had to take on to prevent such a war from happening again.
In the aftermath of World War II, the United States assumed the mantle and the responsibility of leadership, recognizing that the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans would no longer protect us from conflicts started abroad, from ideologies with hegemonic ambitions, or from governments with malign intentions. It was America's time to lead, and we did so, guided by our founding principles and core values. The United States rose to the challenge. We built relationships with like-minded nations based on reciprocal trade, not predatory economics, based on respect for the sovereignty of all countries, not a strategy of might makes right, based on a commitment to always honoring our international obligations, not just when they serve our interests, and most importantly, based on our enduring values and beliefs. From our alliances with Japan, South Korea, and Australia, to our long collaboration with ASEAN countries, India, New Zealand, and the Pacific Island countries. Growing, deepening, and unifying this network must remain central to our collective strategy to ensure peace and prosperity for another 75 years and beyond. We welcome every nation, especially those that have benefited most from today's international system, to join us in this effort. For decades, the United States and our partners have based our efforts on the belief that today's free and open order, however imperfect, is worth fighting for. And while this system has largely remained intact, we cannot take it for granted or leave its future up to chance. That is why, together, we are committed to improving it and remain ready to defend it. much like the greatest generation did when history called and fate challenged.
Finally, the Secretary thanked all the veterans for their service and sacrifice in defending the nation.
It is because of your selfless service and your sacrifice that we live in peace and prosperity today. And it is your legacy that inspires us in our efforts to uphold the freedoms and values for which you so nobly fought. Thank you all very much.
The end of World War II in Europe, also known as VE Day, will be commemorated in Washington, D.C. on September 25th. Reporting from Honolulu, Hawaii, I'm Miwa Senas for Eagle News. We live in interesting times.
Thank you, Mio. ASEAN in Focus, we'll be right back.
Sa September 5 at 6 ay muli nating mapapanood ang mas pinalawak at mas pinalaking talent competition on Philippine television and online. Tagisan ng Galing Part 2! Muling samahan ang ating mga hurado na humanap ng mga Pilipinong may natatanging galing sa pagkanta at pagsayaw. Abangan ang kanilang performances na magpapayanig at magbibigay ng kulay sa ating TNG stage. Dito lang yan sa Tagisan ng Galing Part 2! Dito lang sa Net 25.
Sila ang mga kinikilalang bayaning may mahalagang papel para makamit ang kalayaan at pagbabago sa Pilipinas. Pero sa panahong ito, may mga bagong bayaning nakikipaglaban sa sakit na lumaganap sa buong daigdig, ang COVID-19. Ang ating mga frontliner, gaya ng healthcare workers, mga doktor, nurses, medical technologists, at iba pang health professionals, mga pulis, sundalo, security guards, mga tauhan na nangangalaga sa seguridad at mahahalagang pangangailangan ng bawat komunidad. Ang mga bagong bayani, ating pasalamatan. Kilalanin ang kanilang sakripisyo at serbisyo para sa lahat.
Welcome back. A rising esports player has won a years-long battle for Malaysian citizenship, a victory that allows him to compete internationally and highlights problems faced by hundreds of thousands of stateless children in the country. Muhammad Aiman Hafizi was part of a team in his native Malaysia competing in the popular Player Unknown's Battlegrounds, or PUBG, which can pit up to 100 of participants against each other in a virtual fight to the death. But when they won the chance to take part in 2 tournaments in China last year, the 20-year-old had to skip them. He could not travel overseas as he was officially stateless. Let's take a look.
Ibu saya orang Indonesia and saya tiada maklumat bapa saya dekat sijil lahir. So saya tidak didaftarkan kewarganegaraan semasa ibu saya serahkan saya kepada family angkat. Untuk jadi player profesional, dia tak menghalang. Cuma perjalanan itu akan jadi lagi sukar lah, daripada berbanding mempunyai warga negara ataupun IC.
Ya, saya menyokong dia dengan sepenuh hati. Walau di mana dia pergi pun saya minta dia berjaya. Itu saja. Tapi saya berharaplah pada orang-orang lain yang ambil anak angkat dari mak Indon ke mak luar-luar negeri itu, minta kerajaan Malaysia percepatkan permohonan dia orang lah. Pasal benda
was born in Malaysia to an Indonesian mother and adopted by local parents. But he had never been recognized as a Malaysian citizen and could not get a passport. He had applied to become Malaysian years earlier and was refused, but after being forced to miss the tournaments, he renewed his efforts by launching a widely publicized legal battle. Authorities then decided to grant him citizenship, making the court fight unnecessary. While travel overseas for competitions looks unlikely in the near future due to the pandemic, the decision nevertheless opens the door for Aiman to develop his career in the booming esports scene. Born to an Indonesian mother and an unknown father, Aiman was adopted by a couple from Malaysia's ethnic Malay Muslim majority in the town of Taiping in the central state of Perak. Though his birth was later registered by his adoptive parents, his documents described him as stateless, as well as leaving him without a passport. This made it more difficult to get access to healthcare, education, and work, and he could not even open a bank account. Unlike some countries, Malaysia, which is home to millions of migrant workers from poorer parts of Asia, does not automatically grant citizenship to people born there. At least 290,000 stateless children live in Malaysia, many with parents from Indonesia, Philippines, and Myanmar, according to media reports citing officials. There are believed to be many stateless adults as well, although the overall figure is not clear. Malaysia's constitution says the government can choose to register anyone under the age of 21 as a citizen. But Aiman's lawyer, News and News, said the process was quite opaque and takes a very long time. A 300-meter-long 3D artwork has added some beauty and serenity to a neighborhood in the south of Indonesia's capital, Jakarta. A group of artists were keen to liven the mood during the ongoing pandemic. Take a look.
Hidup jalan, jadi komplek itu jadi ramai lah, yang main anak-anak gitu loh. Kalau dulu mah sepi dulu mah, cuma lalu-lalang mobil doang. Kalau sekarang mah
And that is the latest news in the Southeast Asian nations. Stay updated about the ASEAN region. I'm Alma Angeles. We live in interesting times.